The village of Ashmoor, nestled on the edge of the sprawling moorlands of northern England, was a picturesque hamlet with cobblestone streets, quaint cottages, and a church that stood at its heart. By day, the village was a peaceful haven, its residents going about their daily routines with smiles and greetings. But as night fell, especially during the full moon, an ominous change swept through Ashmoor. For decades, the villagers had whispered of a beast that emerged from the moor under the light of the full moon. The tales varied. Some described it as a giant wolf with glowing red eyes, while others spoke of a more grotesque creature, part man and part beast, with claws that could rend steel and a howl that curdled blood. Regardless of the specifics, the stories all agreed on one thing: the beast was real, and it was deadly. On these nights, an eerie silence would envelop Ashmoor as the full moon rose, casting its silver light across the rooftops. Doors were bolted shut, windows were barred, and the villagers huddled together, praying for the night to pass without incident. Livestock was often found slaughtered, their carcasses mangled and drained of blood. On the rare, tragic occasions, the beast claimed human lives, leaving behind only horror and grief. Among the villagers, Thomas Whitby stood out. A dedicated historian in his late 30s with a sharp mind and an insatiable curiosity, Thomas had always been fascinated by the legends and folklore that surrounded Ashmoor. He lived alone in a modest cottage filled with ancient tomes, manuscripts, and artifacts that chronicled the village's rich history. Unlike his neighbors, who saw the beast as a malevolent force to be feared, Thomas saw it as a mystery to be solved. As the full moon loomed once more, Thomas found himself drawn to the village's archives. For weeks, he had been poring over old records, letters, and diaries, seeking any clue that could explain the beast's origin. His research led him to the story of Lord Alastair Blackwood, a nobleman who had ruled Ashmoor centuries ago. Blackwood was known as a fair and just lord, beloved by his people, but his life had taken a dark turn when he fell in love with Eliza, a woman accused of witchcraft. According to the records, Eliza was a healer, a woman of wisdom and kindness who had captured Alastair's heart. However, her knowledge of herbs and remedies aroused suspicion among the villagers, who accused her of witchcraft. Despite Alastair's fervent defense, Eliza was tried, condemned, and burned at the stake. With her dying breath, she cursed Alastair, vowing that he would suffer for eternity, transforming into a beast every full moon, condemned to roam the moor in search of redemption that would never come. Determined to uncover the truth, Thomas decided to visit the ruins of Blackwood Manor, which lay deep within the moor. The manor had been abandoned for centuries, its once grand halls now reduced to crumbling walls and overgrown courtyards. Armed with a lantern and his notebook, Thomas set out on a foggy afternoon, the moor's eerie quiet adding to his sense of anticipation and dread. The journey was arduous, the moor's treacherous terrain and thick mist making progress slow and difficult. As he approached the ruins, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows that danced in the growing darkness. The manor, now a ghostly silhouette against the twilight sky, exuded an air of melancholy and forgotten grandeur. Inside the manor, Thomas carefully navigated through the debris and rubble, his lantern casting flickering light on faded tapestries and cracked portraits. In a hidden chamber, he discovered Alastair's personal diary, preserved in a chest beneath a fallen beam. The pages, yellowed with age, detailed Alistair's torment and regret, his sorrow over Eliza's fate, and his desperate attempts to break the curse. As Thomas read the final entry, his heart pounded with a mixture of excitement and fear. According to the diary, the curse could only be broken by an act of true sacrifice and love, performed under the light of a full moon. Armed with this knowledge, Thomas knew what he had to do. He had to confront the beast and attempt to break the curse, no matter the cost. As he left the ruins and made his way back to the village, the full moon rose, casting its haunting glow over the moor. The howls of the beast echoed in the distance, a chilling reminder of the danger that awaited. Thomas steeled himself for the battle ahead, determined to save Ashmoor from the terror that had plagued it for so long. Returning to Ashmoor from his harrowing journey to Blackwood Manor, Thomas Whitby could barely contain the mixture of fear and anticipation that churned within him. The village, bathed in the soft glow of the setting sun, seemed oblivious to the dark history he had uncovered. But Thomas knew that as the full moon rose, the beast would emerge once more, and with it, the truth of Lord Alistair Blackwood's tragic fate. Thomas spent the following days delving deeper into the history of Lord Blackwood and Eliza. The village archives, though sparse, offered glimpses into a time long past. Old letters and testimonies painted a picture of Alistair as a compassionate and just lord, deeply in love with Eliza, a healer who was both respected and feared for her knowledge of herbs and natural remedies. Despite Alistair's attempts to protect her, Eliza's fate was sealed by the superstitions and fears of the villagers. The more Thomas read, the more he felt the weight of their tragic love story. Eliza's execution had not only shattered Alistair's heart, but it also invoked a powerful curse. With her dying breath, Eliza had cursed Alistair, condemning him to transform into a monstrous beast every full moon. This curse was to last until an act of true sacrifice and love could break it, a feat that seemed impossible given the beast's terrifying nature. Determined to find a way to help, Thomas shared his discoveries with his closest friend, Emily Carter. Emily, a schoolteacher with a passion for local folklore, had always supported Thomas's research, though she was skeptical of the supernatural elements. As Thomas recounted the tale of Alistair and Eliza, and the curse that bound them, Emily's skepticism faded, replaced by a deep sense of empathy and resolve. "Thomas, if there's a chance to end this suffering, we have to take it," Emily said, her eyes reflecting the determination in her voice. "But how do we even begin to break a curse like this?" Thomas revealed the final entry in Alistair's diary, which detailed the necessary components for the ritual to break the curse. A silver chalice, a lock of Eliza's hair preserved in an amulet, and a rare herb known as wolfsbane. These items, combined with a heartfelt act of sacrifice under the full moon, were the key to freeing Alistair from his torment. Together, Thomas and Emily set out to gather the required items. The silver chalice was relatively easy to find. It had been kept in the village church, a relic from the days of Lord Blackwood. The amulet containing a lock of Eliza's hair was more challenging. According to local lore, it had been hidden in the old Blackwood family crypt, now overgrown and seldom visited. Braving the overgrown path to the crypt, Thomas and Emily unearthed the amulet from its hiding place. As they held the ancient relic, they felt a sense of connection to the past, a poignant reminder of the love and loss that had led them to this moment. The final piece of the puzzle, the wolfsbane, grew wild on the moor, its location known only to the most knowledgeable herbalists. With the chalice, amulet, and wolfsbane in hand, Thomas and Emily prepared for the upcoming full moon. The ritual site described in the diary was to be set up near the ruins of Blackwood Manor, where the curse had begun. They spent the next few days rehearsing the incantation and ensuring they had everything they needed. As the full moon approached, a sense of urgency and dread settled over them. On the night of the full moon, Thomas and Emily made their way to the manor. The journey was fraught with tension, every rustle of leaves and distant howl a reminder of the beast that awaited them. They arrived at the ruins just as the moon rose high in the sky, casting an eerie light over the crumbling walls and overgrown courtyard. Setting up the ritual site, they placed the silver chalice in the center and surrounded it with wolfsbane. Emily held the amulet tightly, feeling the weight of its history and the hope it represented. As they recited the incantation, the air grew heavy with anticipation. The howls of the beast grew louder, and soon it emerged from the shadows, its eyes glowing with a mix of rage and sorrow. The beast hesitated, recognizing the relics of its past life. With a mixture of courage and compassion, Emily stepped forward, holding out the silver chalice and the amulet. She spoke to the beast, addressing it as Alistair, urging him to remember his humanity and the love he once shared with Eliza. The beast seemed to waver, its monstrous form flickering as the moonlight bathed them. But the curse was not easily undone. Thomas realized that the true sacrifice required was not just the ritual, but an act of selflessness and love from someone who genuinely cared. As they faced the beast, the weight of what lay ahead pressed heavily upon them. As the realization of what breaking the curse truly required dawned on Thomas and Emily, the weight of their task became almost unbearable. Emily's eyes met Thomas's, and a silent understanding passed between them. This was not just about following instructions from a centuries-old diary. It was about reaching out to the humanity still buried deep within the beast and making a genuine connection. With only days left before the full moon, they decided to fortify their resolve and prepare for the ultimate confrontation. Thomas spent hours each day meticulously translating and practicing the incantation, while Emily scoured the moor for additional wolfsbane, hoping its presence would strengthen the ritual. They both understood that the journey ahead would be fraught with danger, but the stakes were too high to back down. To ensure their safety and improve their chances of success, Thomas and Emily sought the help of John, the village blacksmith, and Sarah, the local apothecary. John provided sturdy iron weapons and helped them fashion protective gear, while Sarah supplied healing salves and potions, drawing on her extensive knowledge of herbal medicine. In their final meeting before the full moon, the group gathered in Thomas's cottage. The air was thick with tension, but also with a sense of camaraderie. Thomas spread out a map of the moor on the wooden table, detailing their route to Blackwood Manor and outlining their plan. "Once we reach the manor, we'll set up the ritual site in the courtyard," Thomas explained, his finger tracing the path on the map. "We need to be quick and efficient. The moon will be at its highest for only a short time." Emily nodded, her expression determined. "We have to ensure the beast recognizes the amulet and the chalice. If we can get through to Alistair even for a moment, we might be able to complete the ritual and break the curse." John, his face set in grim determination, added, "And if things go wrong, we'll need to protect ourselves. We can't let the beast harm anyone else." Sarah handed out small vials of wolfsbane extract. These are for emergencies. If you need to fend off the beast, this should slow it down. Just be careful. It's potent. With their plan in place and their supplies gathered, Thomas and Emily took a moment to themselves. Sitting by the fire in Thomas's cottage, they shared their fears and hopes for the upcoming night. "Do you really think we can do this, Thomas?" Emily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Thomas reached out, taking her hand in his. "We have to believe we can. If there's even a chance we can save Alistair and end this terror, we have to try." The night of the full moon arrived with an eerie calm. The village was silent, its inhabitants hidden away in their homes, praying for safety. Thomas, Emily, John, and Sarah set out for Blackwood Manor, their footsteps muffled by the dense fog that clung to the moor. The moon, full and radiant, cast long shadows that seemed to dance and flicker with each step they took. As they approached the manor, the ruins loomed out of the mist, a stark reminder of the past's lingering presence. They moved quickly, setting up the ritual site in the courtyard. The silver chalice was placed in the center, surrounded by wolfsbane, and the amulet lay ready in Emily's hand. The air grew colder as the moon reached its zenith, and the howls of the beast echoed across the moor. Hearts pounding, the group braced themselves for the inevitable confrontation. The beast emerged from the shadows, its eyes glowing with a mix of rage and sorrow, its form a grotesque amalgamation of man and monster. Thomas and Emily began the incantation, their voices steady despite the terror that gripped them. The beast hesitated, its eyes locking onto the silver chalice and the amulet. For a moment, the human within seemed to surface, its monstrous form flickering. Emily stepped forward, holding the amulet aloft. "Alistair, remember who you are. Remember Eliza and the love you shared." The beast let out a mournful howl, its body trembling. But the curse was not easily undone. As the ritual progressed, it became clear that more than words and relics were needed. The true sacrifice required an act of selflessness and love. Thomas and Emily exchanged a glance, the understanding between them deepening. Emily, her heart heavy with resolve, stepped closer to the beast. "Alistair, if there is any part of you that remembers love, take this gift and find peace." With that, she offered herself, holding out the amulet and the chalice. The beast's eyes flickered, recognition and sorrow mingling in its gaze. The moment stretched, the air thick with anticipation and dread. The beast's transformation slowed, its monstrous features softening. But as the moonlight bathed them, it became clear that the ritual alone was not enough. A deeper, more profound act was needed, an act of true sacrifice and love. In that moment of clarity, Thomas realized what had to be done. He stepped forward, his hand resting on Emily's shoulder. "We will do this together," he whispered. "For Alistair, for Eliza, and for Ashmoor." As they stood together, facing the beast, the weight of their choice pressed heavily upon them. The path ahead was fraught with danger and uncertainty, but their resolve was unshakable. Together, they would confront the curse and strive to break it, no matter the cost. The moon had reached its zenith, casting an ethereal glow over the ruins of Blackwood Manor. The air was thick with tension, and the haunting howls of the beast reverberated through the night. Thomas, Emily, John, and Sarah stood at the ready, their faces grimly determined as they faced the monstrous creature that emerged from the shadows. The beast, once the noble Lord Alistair Blackwood, was a grotesque amalgamation of man and monster, its eyes burning with a mix of rage and sorrow. Thomas and Emily began the incantation, their voices steady despite the terror that gripped them. The silver chalice gleamed in the moonlight, surrounded by the wolf's bane, and Emily clutched the amulet containing Eliza's hair. The beast hesitated, its eyes locking onto the relics of its past life. Recognition flickered in its gaze, and for a moment, the human within seemed to surface. Alistair, remember who you are. Remember Eliza and the love you shared, Emily implored, her voice filled with compassion and urgency. The beast let out a mournful howl, its body trembling as it struggled against the curse. The incantation continued, the air around them growing colder, charged with an otherworldly energy. The beast's monstrous form began to flicker, as if caught between two worlds. But the curse was powerful, and mere words were not enough to break it. Thomas and Emily exchanged a glance, a silent understanding passing between them. They knew that the true sacrifice required was more than just performing the ritual. It demanded an act of genuine love and selflessness. Emily's heart was heavy with resolve as she stepped closer to the beast, holding out the amulet and the chalice. Alistair, if there is any part of you that remembers love, take this gift and find peace, she said, her voice trembling but determined. The beast's eyes flickered, recognition and sorrow mingling in its gaze. The moment stretched, the air thick with anticipation and dread. As the moonlight bathed them, the transformation seemed to slow, but it was clear that the ritual alone was not enough. Thomas realized what had to be done. Stepping forward, he placed a hand on Emily's shoulder. "We will do this together," he whispered. "For Alistair, for Eliza, and for Ashmoor." Drawing strength from each other, Thomas and Emily stood side by side, facing the beast. They could feel the weight of the past pressing down on them, the love and loss of Alistair and Eliza echoing through the ages. In a final desperate act of selflessness, Emily offered herself as a conduit for the love that had once bound Alistair and Eliza. "Take my life if it means freeing you from this curse," Emily said, her voice breaking with emotion. As she spoke, the beast's eyes softened, and the human within seemed to struggle to the surface. Alistair's form flickered, and for a moment he appeared as the nobleman he once was, his eyes filled with gratitude and sorrow. With tears streaming down her face, Emily embraced the beast, holding the amulet tightly. Thomas, his heart breaking, watched as the light of the full moon intensified, enveloping them in a radiant glow. The air crackled with energy, and the ground beneath them trembled. In that moment of pure sacrifice, the curse began to unravel. The beast let out a final mournful howl, and its monstrous form began to dissolve. Alistair, now fully human, stood before them, his eyes filled with sorrow and gratitude. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice barely audible. As the light of the full moon began to fade, Alistair's form grew faint, and he reached out to Emily, his hand trembling. "You have freed me," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "I can finally rest." With those words, Alistair's form dissolved into the moonlight, leaving Emily standing alone in the courtyard, the amulet still clutched in her hand. The curse was broken, but at a great cost. Thomas rushed to Emily's side, his heart heavy with grief and relief. "You did it, Emily," he said, his voice trembling. "You saved him." Emily, exhausted and drained, managed a weak smile. "We did it together, Thomas." In the aftermath, the village of Ashmoor slowly began to heal. The beast no longer haunted their nights, and the story of Emily's bravery became a legend. The villagers, once gripped by fear, found solace in the knowledge that the curse had been broken. Thomas, though deeply saddened by the loss of his friend, took solace in knowing that her sacrifice had brought peace to Alistair and the village. He continued his work as a historian, ensuring that the tale of love, sacrifice, and redemption would never be forgotten. The ruins of Blackwood Manor stood as a silent testament to the enduring power of love and the strength of the human spirit. And so, as the years passed, the story of the beast of the moor and the brave souls who broke its curse became a cherished part of Ashmoor's history, a reminder of the enduring power of love and the courage of those who dare to confront the darkness.